Okay, so you're trying to stay informed, right? You want to know what's going on in the world. But you don't want to get bogged down in all the tiny details.
Absolutely.
So let's cut straight to it. Last week, the U.S. imposed a bunch of new tariffs. And, well, we're going to take a deep dive into what this could mean for the Philippines.
Sounds good. We've got an article here from the Philippine Daily Inquirer. It was just published yesterday, April 7th, 2025, and it kind of lays out the groundwork for us.
Yeah.
You know, one of the most interesting things about this whole situation is how people in the Philippines are reacting to these new trade measures.
Yes, exactly.
I mean, you've got other major players, like Canada and the EU talking about retaliation and fighting back. But the early reaction out of the Philippines has been surprisingly upbeat.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even George Barcelon from the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the article quotes him saying he's looking at it from the positive side. So
That's interesting, right?
yeah, it is.
And it seems like that positive spin is largely because of the specific tariff rate that they set for the Philippines. Starting April 9th, it's going to be 17%.
17%. Okay.
And, when you connect that to the bigger picture, it actually looks pretty manageable, especially compared to what some of their neighbors in Southeast Asia are facing.
Yeah, you're talking about some much higher numbers.
Way higher. I mean, Vietnam's looking at 46%, Thailand 36%, Indonesia 32%, Malaysia 24%. And Cambodia is way up at 49%.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it's understandable why you've got people like Sergio Ortiz Luis Jr. from the Philippine Exporters Confederation thinking this could actually be an advantage. Maybe Philippine goods will start looking more attractive to U.S. buyers compared to their neighbors.
Yeah, that's a good point. And we've also got, similar thoughts coming from Agriculture Secretary Francisco T. Laurel Jr. and Danilo Fausto from the Philippine Chamber of Agriculture and Food.
Yeah, even Malacanang is downplaying the whole thing, calling the impact very minimal because the Philippines doesn't actually export that much to the U.S. in the first place. Right. So it's not just the lower percentage, it's also the lower volume.
So there's kind of a potential upside here, at least in the short term, right?
Potentially, yeah.
But this article that we're looking at is suggesting that we shouldn't get too comfortable with that idea. What's the broader concern here?
Well, the really fascinating thing here is the potential for this to have widespread global repercussions. It's not just about the Philippines. It's about everybody.
Right.
And just a few days before this article was published on April 4th, the UN Trade and Development, or UNCTAD, they issued a warning about the international trade system, saying that it's entering a really critical phase.
Uh-oh.
And they're basically saying that all these sweeping new tariffs, they could trigger a decline in overall global economic growth.
Okay.
Which would then weaken investment and just the flow of international trade overall.
So even if the Philippines gets a little bit of a boost initially, a global slowdown could still end up hurting them.
Exactly.
Right.
And the article talks about what they call secondary impacts.
Secondary impacts.
So let's say major global economies start to struggle because of these tariffs.
Yeah.
What happens is multinational corporations, those big companies that operate all over the world, they start facing economic headwinds in major markets.
Yeah.
And what do? They look to reduce costs.
Oh, I see.
And one way to reduce costs is to scale back operations in places like the Philippines.
Uh-oh.
Because the Philippines is a big hub for business process outsourcing BPO.
Yeah.
Right? A lot of companies have their call centers, their back office operations, all that stuff in the Philippines. And if those corporations are struggling, they might start pulling back from those operations.
Makes sense.
And then on top of that, you've got overseas Filipino workers.
Right.
Millions of Filipinos working abroad, sending money back home. Those remittances are huge for the Philippine economy.
Huge, yeah.
But if those economies where they're working start to falter, guess what? Those remittances are going to take a hit too.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's not.
So those are the secondary impacts. And here's where it gets really interesting. If those areas start to take a hit, that could ripple through the entire Philippine economy, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Less money coming in means less spending.
Right.
Lower remittances reduce BPO earnings. All that leads to decreased consumer spending, which affects a whole range of domestic businesses.
Wow. So the domino effect.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's not just consumer spending either. There's also the potential for a downturn in international shipping, which could impact Filipino seafarers as well.
Oh, right, because the Philippines is a major supplier of seafarers.
Exactly. So you can see how this whole thing, it's all connected.
It is. It's kind of a sobering thought that even a seemingly localized trade action like this could have these really far-reaching consequences.
It really is.
Yeah.
And, it's not unprecedented. The article draws a parallel to the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act back in the 1930s.
Oh, yeah.
That was a move that triggered retaliatory tariffs all over the world. It led to a collapse in international trade, and it just made the Great Depression so much worse.
Right.
And the negative consequences of that, they went way beyond just economics.
Yeah.
It had social and political impacts as well.
Okay, so for you, the listener out there, the initial news might have sounded like the Philippines dodged a bullet with these U.S. tariffs.
Right. 17%? Not too bad.
But it's really important to consider the interconnected nature of the global economy.
Yeah. What happens elsewhere can definitely affect what happens in your corner of the world.
Absolutely.
And that actually raises a really important final point, Given this interconnectedness, what other seemingly isolated events might be harboring these hidden global risks, what else should we be paying attention to?
Oh, that's a good question.
Right. Because it's a reminder that in our complex world, the effects of even seemingly small actions, they can spread much further than we might initially think.
Yeah.
So it's all about being aware of those connections and thinking about the bigger picture.
That's a great point to end on. Think about the bigger picture.